Here we have a map of Station 139, Thorpe Abbotts, home of the 100th Bomb Group. So we're going to look at various parts of the map, right down to the village of Thorpe Abbotts. The control tower, where the museum is held, is currently in this position here. It would have had the vantage point of looking at the east-west main runway and the two service runways that formed up the X of the airfield. The airfield was split into 4 squadrons. We had the 351st Bomb Squadron. As we went round the 3-mile perimeter track, we would come to the 349th Bomb Squadron. Going around a corner to the 350th Bomb Squadron. And finally, the 418th Bomb Squadron. Each had their own dispersal site where all the crews and the enlisted men and everything needed to sustain this base, over 3,500 personnel at its peak. So the airfield built as a 50 hardstand base. However, at its peak, it would have held 72 aircraft as they doubled up on what we now call frying pan loops or hard stands. Some differed as we come around to the 349 site to become half loops where planes were doubled up. And then we will also have what is called a Spectacle 8, which again would have multiple aircraft on. So we have the 3-mile taxiway that would service all these bomb squadrons, circumvents the entire width of the airfield. So to support 3,500 personnel, each squadron would have their own dispersal sites. So if we come down to Site 1, we would have the site of the 351st Bomb Squadron. We come slightly down and there's the 418th Bomb Squadron. We move over to Site 3, which is the 349th, and then finally Site 4, the 350th. We also have WAF sites 1 and 2. As this was built to RAF spec, they factored in billeting for females. However, when the US arrived, there was no females on base. So the officers from all 4 squadrons resided in WAF sites 1 and 2, and the enlisted men took the other previous sites mentioned. The airfield gets its name from the tiny village of Thorpe Abbotts, where some less than 200 residents would reside in very few buildings. The road that ran through was not even paved, it was a dirt track. And they were also drinking water from a borehole. They would have outside toilets, and they would have gas lamps. So none of the refineries of this huge airfield that appears beside them with all modern day accoutrements. So on the day of a mission, around about 0300, the crews would be rudely awakened and told that they were flying a mission. So there are 2 different phases. The enlisted men would then go from Site 5 and they would wind up to the communal site, where on this occasion, because they were flying missions, they would receive real eggs and a strong cup of coffee. On a non-flying day, not so nice, powdered eggs. So from the WAF sites, the officers would make their way to the administration site, where they would all enter with all the other crews that were flying, the bombardier, the navigator, the pilot, the co-pilot, and they would sit in their chairs and wait for the CEO to turn up and the air exec, who would pull back that big curtain to reveal a map with a line of red ribbon depicting where they're going today. Prior to a mission, whatever squadrons were selected to fly this mission, they would be brought to readiness. As they were given the go, the aircraft would taxi from their hard stands as they would come around the perimeter track to face the given runway in use depending on the wind direction, and they would line up on the perimeter track and wait for the signal from the control tower. Once received, the engines would rev, the brakes would be released, and in 30-second increments, these 30-ton bombers would fly off on their missions. So after the mission, those that came back had to be debriefed. So once the planes were back on the dispersal again, they would again wind their way through the network of paths and roads to Site 2. Many buildings housed S2 intelligence here, where all the crews would be debriefed. They would be asked, did you see anybody go down? Did you hit any enemy aircraft? And is there any other relevant intelligence that you can give us that would help further missions? Once the debrief is over, again they would go back to the communal sites, eat and drink, before going back to their own dispersal sites. So where we have the sick quarters or the hospital site, inevitably during war, young men were hit by either bullets, shrapnel, some receiving light injuries, some receiving a far lot more. Also, frostbite was a major problem. So we have the infirmary, the morgue, and everything to support the well-being of the officers. And people at the time can recall passing by this site and hearing the cries of the young men that had been wounded in battle.